Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Leading a Hybrid Workplace. My name is Carrie Zenz with Allen Interactions. We're just going to have a little music to kick things off, and would love for you to share in chat where you are working from today.
Oh, yeah. Still don't know what I was waiting for, and my time was running wild in dead-end streets, and every time I thought I got it made, it
Oklahoma
seemed
City,
the taste was not so
Boston,
sweet. So I turned myself
cool.
to face me.
And share if you're working, like, are you working from home? Are you working from a coffee shop?
How the others must see the faker.
Office.
I'm much too fast to take that test. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. It's gonna have to be a different man.
Make sure that you have your settings to all panelists and attendees, that you switch that in chat. It defaults to all panelists. You have to switch it so everyone can see your comments.
I watch the ripples change the size, but never leave the stream of warm permanent sand.
Israel, wow.
So the
cool.
days float through my eyes, but still the days seem the same. And these children that you spit on as they try to change their worlds are immune to your consultations. They're quite aware of what they're going through. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Don't tell them to grow up out of it. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Where's your shame? You've left us up to our next event. Time may change me. You can twist time. Strange fascination, fascinating. Our changes are taking the face I'm going through. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Ooh, look out, you rock and rollers. Changes. Turn and face the strain. Changes. Pretty soon now you're gonna get older. Time may change me, but I can't trace time. I said that time may change me, but I can't trace time.
Okay, that's a good song. Thank you all for joining. We're going to get things going here. Looks like everyone's kind of working in a different place. Some are working from home, some working in the office, some from like a community co-working space. Very cool. So thank you all so much for joining us. I'm Carrie Zenz with Allen Interactions, just kicking things off here today for leading a hybrid workspace. Going here. So just so you know what Allen does a little bit before I turn things over, we are focused on enhancing the human mind and spirit through building meaningful, memorable, and motivational custom learning and technology experiences that lead to measurable results. We do a variety of things. We're most well known for our work in instructional design under our CEO and co-founder, Dr. Michael Allen. So we provide custom learning solutions for organizations. We also offer a variety of other services that you can see here on your screen. And we also have the Allen Academy that offers a lot of opportunities to upskill yourself in building performance changing learning experiences, and also in like learning strategy and things like that. So we'll share some of those at the end. And now on to the important people. So today is really about learning about approaches used to change mindsets and language around the hybrid workspace. We're going to share strategies for building empathy and teamwork while leading distributed teams. And we're going to hear a real world case study of managing a hybrid workplace. So I'm going to kick things off here with Deborah Smith Cook. I'm going to maybe misspell this. She is the owner and president of Athesis and has more than 25 years of experience in strategy consulting and talent development. And Athesis delivers team performance coaching, strategy coaching, and consulting and change management through individuals, teams, and organizations to build superior performance. And she is Dr. Deborah Smith Cook. And then we have Dr. Christina Koidakis Bars. She is an experienced HR learning and organizational change expert for Allen Interactions. She has led initiatives to empower employees, understand and adapt shifts in their current environment. And her sweet spot is building systems that support, engage, and inspire cultures with measurable and sustained results. And then we also have Deborah Southerington, who is going by Deb today because we have two Deborahs. She is the Vice President of Human Resources at Metro Health System, a nationally ranked nonprofit public healthcare system in Cleveland, Ohio. She is an accomplished HR executive and a strategic, results-oriented leader with extensive experience in the full spectrum of HR functions. We really want today to be engaging, use the chat, ask your questions, make your comments. We have a nice intimate group today, so we really want to get everything on the table and get your questions answered, or things that are kind of maybe bothering you, or you're concerning you, or you're inquisitive about. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Deborah.
Thanks, Carrie, and welcome to everybody. And I'm very glad that you all have taken time out of your day to come and talk with us about hybrid organizations. And I don't know about you, but every time I open the newspaper or open a blog or open LinkedIn, another organization is announcing that they are moving to a hybrid remote working schedule. And that is terrific because it takes into account the employee's needs, it helps be more flexible, and it's probably the most complicated kind of organization you can lead. So one of the things that has always kind of I've been curious about is, I'm going to put something in the chat and I'm going to ask you to respond to whether or not you call this remote working, whether you call it working from home, working from another location, or WFX is working from anywhere. That's the latest term that I've seen. So just kind of give me a sense of what you're calling it in your organizations. So as I said, most organizations are adopting the hybrid model for returning to the office. Notice that I don't say returning to work because we've all been working over the last year. We've just been working in a different location. And almost all of these approaches have been with some days in and others out. And it can also vary by function in an organization. So we could have some parts of the organization that are fully remote and others that are partially in and out, and others that are completely in the organization. So it's a very loose term in with respect to how we define this. And I think that's part of the challenge as well, is, it's defined lots of different ways for each organization. And I think that's probably one thing that we have to keep in mind overall, is that there's not going to be one size that fits all. We're all going to have to figure it out with respect to our own organizations and what our needs are. And our bottom line, which we will talk about throughout this, is that hybrid organizations, as I said, are the most complicated to lead because it's not clear cut. It's not straightforward. It's not, in the past, we've had issues about remote organizations where the remote people were the minority. Now we have instead a lot of organizations where the remote people are the majority. Now that changes the way that we interact with people as well. So next slide, please. Thank you, Carrie. So I'm just going to talk about a few of these things. I'm not going to talk about all of them right now because Christina and Deb are going to be talking about some of these issues. But as we've looked at organizations over the last few months, as they have started making the transition back to the office, here are some of the things that have come up. One of the first things that we have to address, and that organizations have been very proactive and intentional, which are two things that we also need to keep in the forefront of our brains, is that we can't just let this happen. We actually have to manage this and think in advance about how we're going to manage anxiety. Anxiety is going to come up because it's been a year, maybe 18 months, since we've dealt with a lot of people at once. I know I feel anxiety when I go out into a social situation now because I haven't had to be around people. So how do we help our employees kind of manage that anxiety? One thing that an organization that I've worked with has done is that they've done small gatherings. So they kind of ease people back in small settings so that you're not going from 0 to 100, you're going from 0 to 5 or 0 to 10. And so it's a way to kind of relieve that anxiety about, gee, I don't even know what to talk about now. Our social awkwardness is at an all-time high because we don't really kind of understand, again, how we interact with people. So there's that kind of social anxiety. We also have a lot of physical anxiety. How do we make sure that people are going to be protected? So I'm sure many of your organizations have, I should have hit send, sorry, on that chat. So a number of organizations have talked about the kinds of safety precautions they put in place. So the sanitizing, the hand sanitizers, the plexiglass, making the hallways wider in one way so that you don't have a lot of interaction with people as you're there. So there are things that we can do that organizations have done basically to say, we want to make sure that your safety, your physical safety is most important to us. And we want to assure you that you're going to be comfortable when you come into the office, if you come into the office. I think the third part of this managing anxiety is related to the social, but it's acknowledging the fear and acknowledging the emotional consequences of making a transition back into the office. It's hard for us to think about going back into a space that we have not possibly been in for 18 months. I have a son who's about 32 right now. He's very interested in going back into the office, but he has a lot of anxiety because he's expecting a new baby. And so now it's like, what am I going to do in terms of, protecting my wife and my new baby by going into the office? So having emotional health resources is very important for organizations. And a lot of organizations have really brought those to the forefront and acknowledged that this is a real fear. So let's address it. Let's not sort of pretend that it doesn't exist. Kind of related to that is about this workspace. So designing the workspace. Many organizations right now are going to hot desks. Great alternative. And of course, it's not a perfect alternative for everybody because I want to have my stuff. I want to have my plant. I want to have pictures of my kids on my desk. But if I am hot desking, I don't have that opportunity. So one organization I know is actually creating home rooms. So these home rooms have lockers. So a team would have their own homeroom with lockers, and I could put my pictures inside the door of my locker so that I have my own space where I can put my things, I can, decorate it however I want to. And so it allows me to show my personality. And then I go off to my hot desk and do my work, but I can come back to my homeroom, which is my safe space. Another organization has created, team spaces where teams can get together and they have a working place where they can collaborate. So many organizations are now reconfiguring their office space to be really more about conference rooms and team collaboration spaces. One last thing in terms of the workspace and kind of related to the schedule is that organizations like courts is is an organization where the CEO is not going to be in the office, partly because he doesn't want everyone to make the decision about when they're going to be in the office when he's there, because we have this fear that, well, if I'm not in the office when the boss is there, I'm going to be forgotten and overlooked. So, he is taking that issue away by saying, I'm only going to be in the office one day a month. And I'm not going to tell you when it is. So you don't have to plan your schedule around his schedule. And that kind of brings up the issue about the schedule. The research has shown that most remote workers choose to be in the office or will choose to be in the office on either Wednesday or Thursday. Those are the two most popular days. It creates all kinds of issues in terms of, if we have all of the workforce in the office on Wednesday, how are we going to manage social distancing and how do we do hot desk? So that's kind of a challenge that we have to deal with. Interestingly, Apple came out about 2 weeks ago with a policy that said everybody has to be in the office for Apple 3 days a week, and those days will be Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. So not listening to what the employees were saying. And in fact, they had a kind of a revolt with some of their employees who said, we're not going to stay if this is the policy that you're going to put in place. So, understand what the schedule is and that it creates issues with, if everybody chooses their own day, then that impinges on someone else's freedom. So, how do we manage that schedule? Resentment, addressing resentment. Our essential workers have had to stay in the office permanently because we needed them in the office or in the hospital or wherever they were working. Another organization that I know recognizes that this is, a problem for those essential workers. So they've started actually paying a bonus to essential workers for working in the office. Remote workers have said the data has shown that a lot of remote workers are willing to take up to a 10% reduction in salary in order to continue working remotely. So this is kind of a balance on that other side. It's like, all right, if you're willing to take that cut, then why don't we compensate those that have to stay in the office with more? All right, so then let's see. The last thing I just want to point out is it's a work in progress, and that's what most organizations are feeling right now and are acknowledging that we don't have all the answers. Some of them have said, we're going to go to this hybrid structure in September, but we're going to know a lot more in September how things are working. So if we approach this with a learning attitude that we're going to try something, if it doesn't work, we're going to try something else, and we're going to keep trying and learning until we get it right. So that requires a certain kind of a mindset that allows us to say, we're doing the best we can, and we should be willing to acknowledge that this is going to change. So when we talk about changes, with David Bowie, that's really what we're all about. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Christina.
Well, thank you, Deborah and Deb and everyone. I've been reading the chat has been going through and really appreciating what people are posting. The connection, so it says distance doesn't mean being distant. And I think I saw over that some people were feeling that being apart means that we're not collaborative enough, that we need to be in and be together to be able to be more collaborative. And really what that's speaking to is psychological safety. Because if we see each other and fully see each other, we feel more safe to share as opposed to being one step distance away. But you can create a sense of psychological safety when you're together in a collaborative work environment. Just as I was reading, I think Lucy was talking about how they have been doing collaborative meetings on Zoom. We just actually this morning just completed Al Interactions, completed a 90-minute design thinking workshop. And it was purely collaborative using, all virtual, using Mural and very simple technology, and we got incredible results. So I think it really goes to how do you create those systems and structures in addition to how do you create that safety for people. So it's, it's people, process, systems, and structure that we need to consider when creating these hybrid work environments. Next. So in creating that hybrid work environment is building a trust and connections through empathy. And empathy can be something that we practice whether we're virtual or whether we're one-on-one with someone. Now, I particularly like the empathy triad by Daniel Goleman. He was in his book, The Focused Leader, and also, I think, yes, Focus, The Hidden Driver of Excellence, which is another book of his. And there's about cognitive empathy, emotional empathy, and compassionate empathy. So cognitive empathy is understanding how people are thinking, their intellectual rationalization on what they're doing, appreciating the logic that got them to where they are. Emotional empathy is understanding how people are feeling. How are they feeling? And meeting them in those feelings, like resonating with their feelings and understanding emotionally where they are. So we're talking about intellectual and emotional. And then compassionate empathy, which is also known as empathetic concern. So empathetic concern is, how do I support and serve you? What is it that you require right now in this moment? So that's where your heart, and then your soul, and how you're helping and serving one another. So that's the cognitive empathy, or the cognitive piece that I really like about empathy, is because when you're thinking of creating these work environments and people start pushing back, or people are pushing back about coming back into the workspace, it's more than just one thing, or thinking that people are just having one particular reason, like they just don't want to drive into work, or having not understanding the root cause of why people are resistant. If they've been more productive prior than coming back into work, then why aren't we meeting them where they are now? Exactly like what Deborah was talking about, there's that resentment piece where you are running a risk of having two cultures in your organization, where you have the culture of the organization that is the essential workers, or the workers that have to be on campus or in person in order to be able to deliver the value for the organization, for their job function. And then you have the workforce that their job function doesn't require for them to be on site, and they bring value as well. I think one of the challenges that we have for our organizations is, how do we bring those two cultures together and not have that split where people start to feel either less than or not worthy. And we want people to be able to express empathy between those two and be able to have those strong bonds. I'm just checking on the chat. I see that about the commute, about commute being anxiety ridden. I lived in Texas, and my commute sometimes was 3 hours going home. So those are hours of my life that I've gotten back. Next slide, please. So making that mind shift is really working in a results only work environment, moving from managing from observation to managing from performance based. So exactly, we need everybody in the office. We're noticing that that's a generational thing as well, that some people feel more comfortable being able to see their people, when really what we want them to see is the results, as opposed to just seeing the human beings there, and seeing people for a full individual and what they bring to the table. The flexibility from a results only work environment really produces higher productivity, more accountability, and less turnover. I mean, you're challenged with, if people do not, like Deborah was saying earlier, if people do not like the way that you're bringing people back into a hybrid work environment, they can easily switch their job without leaving the couch. I mean, there's a lot of work that's out there with those skill sets, and even with the growing gig economy, where people are now starting to work as consultants and being able to deliver just their value. Again, we're challenged with not only working within an organization, but then also with this gig economy. I just read about that, the great resignation. There was a couple of articles about that recently. Now we're talking about bringing a whole person together, work-wise, accountability, productivity, doing really well, but also for people, for the workers, their health is better too when they are working in this hybrid work environment. The research shows that, better sleep duration, higher energy levels, self-supported health, and even exercise. People are more active and they're investing their time in themselves. That time that is, people were talking earlier about having that commute time. And there's increased job satisfaction and, again, organizational commitment so that you have better retention. So let's just talk about the cons. There's a couple of cons. One, it can be difficult to manage, just like Deborah was saying, and it's a communication challenge because different people have different methods of communication. As a instructor, a professor, I can tell you the generation of who people are by how they communicate with me and talk to me. Are they texting? Are they emailing? Are they calling me? I have a better understanding of where their comfort level is in communicating. Well, that's the same thing within a hybrid work environment. When you start to put into place different ways for people to communicate, make sure that you have access on multiple levels to address multiple ways that people feel comfortable. And then also understanding that it has to have the right people for the right fit for the job. Not all people are cut out to be remote workers. You have to have a lot of self-discipline and self-management in order to be able to work at that level and have that self-accountability. So that's another part too, when you have people working, whether you're considering to continue to stay or you're hiring people, that's one of those critical characteristics that you may be looking for in hiring a work from home or a work from anywhere employee. So, let's just talk about two case studies that one, this results only work environment has been around for a long time. Best Buy started it back in like 2005. And they tried it for a significant amount of time. I think it was almost 8 years. And in 2013, the plug got pulled by their CEO. And there's a lot of questions about why, but it was thought that what people were doing was applying the same leadership style to everyone. So everything was being delegated and that was an issue. So that's the reason why they pulled it. There might be some other reasons why in 2013, Best Buy did unplug that. But that's just to give you an idea that this results only work environment has been around significantly. Now, a successful is Watts. And Watts is a content management and marketing firm for agriculture. And they did a fantastic job. And they talk about the power of trust. And what they found was shifting their managers from managers of people to coaches, to results coaches. So their titles were more about how do we get you to where you need to be? What results do you require? Now, doesn't that sound a lot like the empathy triad where we talked about, the emotional empathy, the cognitive empathy, coaching is connection, and then the empathetic or concern or compassionate empathy, where what do I need to take to remove those roadblocks? How can I help and serve you so that you're able to do your job and have the skills and the tools to do your job? So those were the two that it was a really great article that kind of did a compare and contrast. So next slide. So I'm going to turn this over to Deborah, to Deb. I keep calling Deb.
So good afternoon, everybody. Appreciate you having me on the call today. So I'm sitting here listening and thinking, and was hoping when I got on the call today that I would learn something from, the presenters, the panelists, as well as you all in the audience today. So it's been a journey the last year trying to manage the workforce. It's been a journey and it's been a challenge. So I'm going to take us back to, March of 2020. I hope I can do just kind of a little bit of a build up here to where we are today. Here at Metro Health, we have 8,000 employees and we're a hospital, right? And so we identified about 1,000 people initially that we could send remote. So, you kick it into gear, you're dealing with a pandemic, you get everybody out of the workplace, you get the equipment, the technology, they're out, they're gone. And now we've got a whole new set of challenges that we have to manage. And we've talked about them on this call today, right? How do people stay connected? How do we measure their productivity, right? This is an organization that was not the culture was not to work remote. We're a hospital, not even for administrative staff. So, we have executive leaders and our president and CEO, how are we going to make sure people are working, right? So we go through that whole scenario, right? How are we going to measure it? Are we going to get some software, et cetera? We got to a point where we decided, nope, we're just going to, we're all rolling with it. We're going to rely on our managers and supervisors to monitor and measure the productivity, but they've never had to do it from a remote location before, right? So we're all trying to get used to using the technology, the video cams, the teams, et cetera. So, we dealt with that change and we all kind of settled into our new norm. I think everybody can relate to that. And now we're used to it, right? We are productive and sometimes even more productive when we're at home, right? So now as an organization, we're changing our mindset to say, hey, in our future state, we don't have to bring everybody back to the office, right? But what is the right balance? What's the balance between coming on site and having the engagement and the connectivity and being connected to the mission and the vision of this organization? And so how do we manage that? So this has been in my 20 years or plus years, and now I'm dating myself here, of experience in the HR world, managing the workforce over the last year has been the biggest challenge. And we don't have the answers, right? How are we going to manage this hybrid remote workforce? So some of the things that we are doing moving forward, this has given us the opportunity, and again, I'm speaking from the operational lens now, the HR operational lens. How, where are we do we need to even have as much space, right? There's always the space implications. Do we need to have all the space that we used to have for our 800 employees? Can we repurpose that space, right? Can we reutilize that space? So there's so much that has gone into trying to figure out our future state as it relates to space. We got to think about the infrastructure and our foundation of our systems, right? Are we equipped to manage local tax issues, right? Are we equipped with our managers to manage people in and out of the office, right? And then how do we prepare our workforce with everything we've talked about the anxiety, right? Now there's a whole new workplace, right? Everybody has to be flexible. So we are also moving to what we're calling a shared workspace. I heard the word a hot desk. I hadn't heard that before. So I think it's a similar concept, right? I used to have an office, employee A, I used to have an office. I'm going to come back now into the office a few days a week and I'm going to have to share my space. We've had all these discussions about where am I going to put my pictures? Everything I'm hearing today so resonates with the conversation that we've been having here for the last year and a half, right? Where do I put my pictures? How do I feel connected to my family when I'm at work? And how come I don't have my personal space anymore? So there's so many things to manage and to think about as we re-engage this workforce, that it's just here, it's a spiral of conversation, because as you begin to talk about it and you engage your stakeholders, there's that question about, oh, but what do we do about this, right? What do we do about that? There's the safety concern about how do we make sure that the desk spaces are staying clean? Who's going to be responsible for cleaning them? So it's been like I said, it's been a journey and it's been a challenge. And we are working here at Metro Health to bring our folks back somewhere around third quarter of this year. We've got some space planning strategy going on as it relates to reconfiguring the space. But what really also complicates things a little bit or makes it a little bit more complex is that we're also building a new hospital at the same time. So the amount of change that folks have to go through are going through as we begin to kind of frame out this future workplace is, it's a lot. It's a lot. And I don't have all the answers, right? I mean, who has all the answers? So I appreciate, the dialogue today. And as we continue to move forward, we're not going to get it 100% right. So I think somebody said it earlier that, we got to just test, we got to try it out, right? We got to try it out. And if it doesn't work, we have to adjust. because this is new territory. You know, for some companies, perhaps if they've had this remote workforce, it's not quite as new, but for where we are here today at Metro Health in Cleveland, Ohio, building a new hospital, trying to manage our 8,000 employees, this is completely new. And there's so many, there's so many points that we've got to think about. And as we work this and build this out, that it's, it feels like for me that it's a never, I like finality, right? Okay, what's the plan? Let's get it done. There's no finality to this plan, right? It is a plan in motion all of the time. So I wanted to see if there's anything in the chat that maybe I want to touch on. A lot of it resonated with me. So did the hospital blueprints change to allow future flexibility? So so the new hospital, I don't know if that's the new hospital you're talking about or not, but we are changing the blueprints of our administrative sites and our administrative areas for this remote, flexible workforce. And one thing that we did do that I know we talked about a little bit is that we are actually going to bucket our employees. We're going to set their schedules. But that's today, right? 4 days or 2 weeks from now, that might change. And we have to do that so we can ensure that we've got enough space, right? We can't have, 800 people in on one day when we only have space for 500, right? That's a little bit high of an exaggeration, but we're going to bucket them into 4 different buckets. So they're either going to be full-time remote, they're going to be hybrid, they're going to be mobile, or they're going to be full-time on site. And so there's a percentage of time associated with each one of those. So we've got to build out our space planning so that we can accommodate folks when they're in the office and know who's going to be in when. So for us, it's a little bit more prescribed. It's not going to be a free-for-all that you can come in any day you want. We are going to prescribe, when people need to be in. So, the one thing that has really come to the surface recently as we get closer to this September date is how people are feeling, right? I have not gone home to work remote. And so, but the entire HR team here at Metro Health has been at home. So we've asked our teams to start coming back in just a little bit at a time, maybe 1 day a week, our leaders and, some of our other staff folks. And it's been interesting because we think we need to come in so you can be seen, right? We want people to you to be visible as leaders. We want you to be seen. But we find when they come back in the office, they're sitting in their office with their door closed on their computers and on their monitors, right? And so, trying to get it right, nobody knows how to get it right. But it's so, I would ask everybody, to come up with their ideas and how we can make this work. I'd love to hear from the group. I see that Christopher maybe says, I work at a large hospital system in New York State. We're now 100% remote and I'll remain 100% remote. And I wonder, what the challenges are here too. I think Christina, you said it. We've got folks here that are caregivers. They cannot work remote. And so we've got, and it just came to light to me probably about 2 months ago. There's the resentment of those folks who are working full-time on site. There's the resentment that there's folks at home working and they can't go home and work. And so, managing the people part of this is challenging, right? And how do we keep those remote workers engaged? So listen, there's a lot of thought. We've got a big team working on it. And listen, I'd like to hear from anybody on the call if they've got any questions or if there's anything else in the chat that maybe somebody wants to talk about it. We'd love to hear, what are other organizations doing?
Well, I agree. Metro Health is doing phenomenal work there. You guys are cutting the cloth, trying to be, the first part you're doing is you're being open and saying, okay, we're going to start here. And then we're just going to revisit and iterate and make those changes and adjustments to see how it works. I think, let's see, I do agree there was a great line here on, I think developing leaders' ability to facilitate dialogue can tremendously impact people's anxiety and develop together. And I think that really does. This is more it's working from home, but it's also how do we equip our leaders to be the most effective and efficient. Deborah, when we were talking about managing of resentment, the office versus the work from anywhere, what are some of your suggestions? You're a remote work expert. Love to hear from you. You're on mute.
Yeah, that's always a bad setup when you say you're an expert. It's like, okay, let me think of what kind of words of wisdom can come out of my mouth. So, I think, actually talking to Deb a month or so ago really brought the conflict, the resentment to the forefront when she was talking about the essential workers, the healthcare workers that can't work from home. And so the question is, how do we help the groups, those that can work from home, those that can't, come together, make connections, understand how their roles support and enhance each other. And then, we also have to think about the system. So again, there's an organization that I've been working with. They are now paying their on-site workers a premium because they have to work on site. And so, so compensating them for the kinds of things that they have to do. But that doesn't address the emotional connections. And so there we have, how do we facilitate that conversation? How do the support people support the ones that are working in the hospitals or in the essential roles where they can't? So what is it that their work does that makes it important for the essential workers to do their jobs? So facilitating those conversations, I think, is a big thing. Understanding where the points of contact are, helping people realize where the dependencies are. So if I, don't have this, I'm not going to be able to do my job. So, it's like, state conversations when we're working between, countries, is that we have to really find ways to find the commonalities and where we need to work together. And then, creating the appreciation for each group. I totally appreciate and know that it's a luxury that I can work from anywhere. And I appreciate that there are some people that can't. And so, having that gratitude, the appreciation of the different types, I think is really critical. I think it's some of the other things that I noticed in the chat. We talked about, or there were several people, I think Christopher and Angela talked about the problems with video. And, does video enhance communication or does it inhibit communication? And how do we maintain our connections? A lot of organizations argue that we have to use video because that face-to-face view, even if we're not sitting next to each other, but we're seeing each other, is critical. Other organizations use Microsoft Teams, so they have an avatar. And I can't remember if it was Angela or maybe it was Leah made a comment in the chat that, they get together before the meetings and kind of tell jokes and share stories. And that's absolutely critical for managing these hybrid organizations, because we need to have those personal connections, not just a work to work, but it's like, I need to know, how you're feeling about this. I need to understand, how you are dealing with this pandemic and with all the circumstances that are going on, because it helps me connect with you. And so it makes me feel and understand you more. So I think, the technology that either supports or doesn't support the video conferencing is a challenge, but it doesn't mean that we can't have those connections if we don't have video. So we have to really be very conscious about that. I've been reading the chat, and there are just some great comments in there and great questions. So can I ask another one, or can I talk to another one? Okay. Scott asked whether or not remote workers get marginalized when they're on a conference call, when other people are in the conference room and they are calling in remotely. And that has been such a classic problem with remote workers in the past, because inevitably the people in the conference room have the feather. They're the ones who get to talk because they can see each other. And the ones that are remote are missed and they are marginalized. So over the last year, everybody became remote. And so then we became a lot more democratic in terms of how we were making sure that everyone had a voice if we were, because everybody had an equal chance. So what have organizations done? Some of them have gone to a remote first mentality where everybody is remote. Even if you're sitting in your office, in the office building, you're on your laptop. So there's nobody in the conference room. So you kind of create that democratic position as well. That I think is going to be a big challenge that we have to work with, because we're already hearing people saying, so who's going to be marginalized now? Is it still going to be the remote workers? Is it going to be, people that are, in a different function? So I think this is a big challenge that we still have to deal with. But it's something that we have to consciously manage. And I don't know if you're familiar with Susan Cain's book about introverts, but in some ways we have to treat everybody as an introvert and draw everybody into the conversation so that people are not missed, because we miss too many things when we don't capture all of the things that introverts can add to it. So I'll stop now.
That's excellent. I think you brought a really great point about dependencies, and Mildred, hi Mildred, did a great job in talking about emotional intelligence and how emotional intelligence serves that purpose to help leaders to be those results coaches and bring and help them be able to make those connections to one another, and bring two desperately located teams together to see for that greater good. It goes to Deming's chain of quality. If I understand, if I'm doing this, if I understand what is happening before me and what is happening after me, I understand the value of my work and the value of the timing, the interactions, and being able to exercise that empathy, that when somebody that's a worker that has to work on campus for whatever reason, an essential worker, when they reach out to somebody that has that flexibility, they understand why some requests may be time sensitive. And when they respond back, don't respond back. This is just a story. Don't respond back saying, oh, I would have gotten to you earlier, but I was at a yoga class. Yeah, probably not. But thinking about how do you empathize and connect emotionally so that you, that other person on the other end of your Zoom call or your email chain feels like they're worthy of your full attention, whenever it may be, and be sensitive to how they're feeling. I think it's going to be an iterative process on culture and change management as we move forward into this brave new world. Deborah or Deb, any other thoughts?
So I guess I just wanted to say one more thing about what we're doing here at Metro Health is we want to be very intentional and thoughtful in ensuring that leaders bring their remote workers in on a regular cadence to have that interaction in person. So whether that's, a meeting or a recognition or just a fun time, but just to keep that interaction going face to face as well.
And I just want to add a little bit too about, I noticed a comment in there about popsicles and ice cream and massage chairs in the office. Again, organizations are saying our remote workers need to be treated in the same way. So there's an issue about equity. How do we give equity to our remote workers and our on-site workers? So if you're going to provide popsicles and ice cream to the people in your office, you might think about providing something to your remote workers as well. And in fact, some organizations do home food delivery. They provide house cleaning services for remote workers, because you think about it, and someone else made the comment about, your home energy bills going up since you've worked from home. In the office, we have somebody who cleans our office all the time. fixes the bathroom, replaces the toilet paper, does all the things that we now have to do at home. So if you think about that as a balancing of equity, what can you provide? What benefits would be of great value to your remote workers? Because there is this trend right now that the remote workers are saying, if I can't work remotely, I'm going to change jobs. So if you want to keep them, you need to think about what are the benefits that are going to keep them with you so they don't take all that knowledge and all that experience and go work for somebody else.
So it's funny that you said that, Deborah, because we did an ice cream truck at all of our locations, and I don't think we contemplated our remote workforce. So actually appreciate you saying that. The equity piece is going to be big.
Yeah.
So again, this is just for us as, uncharted territory. And again, we're not going to get it perfect, but we're going to do the best we can to think about every person as well as the operational needs of the hospital.
Yeah, it's about learning. We're all about learning.
It's a hybrid work environment is a process. It's not an outcome. And as long as we think of it that way and embrace it that way, it's going to be a very productive change in the workforce. Carrie?
Yes, I'm here. This has been just so great. I have just thoroughly enjoyed everything you guys have touched on. The participation of everyone who joined in has been amazing. So thank you all. I hope you took away something from this, each and every one of you. Thank you so much to Dr. Deborah Smith-Cook, to Deborah Southerington, and to Dr. Christina Quidakis-Bars for sharing all of your knowledge with us and experience. It's been wonderful. Just quick, wanted to share a couple of things about what we have going on here at Allen Interactions. Claire is going to throw these in the link or in the chat. Throw the link in the chat. So we have a few webinars coming up on microlearning and then on creating irresistible e-learning design. If you're interested in those, they're both free. And then we also have a lot going on with our Allen Academy. So she'll also throw that link in there too. That's there in the third link there. She posted 3 different links in the chat for you guys. So lots of courses going on. If any of you, if you find of interest of those, snag one of them up. They're all really great. Different teachers. Some of them are big thought leaders in the industry, like Clark Quinn and Clark Aldridge. And then we've got some of our thought leaders with Allen. Ethan Edwards is big into, well known for instructional design. And then Dr. Michael Allen, obviously our CEO and founder. So thank you all so much for spending this 45 minutes with us. And we're going to give you back 15 before you've got your next event or meeting or whatever you have going on. So have a great rest of your day today, and keep learning and have patience.